Bitcoiners, hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well. P-Man Van, good morning. And we got Daniel giving P-Man a good morning. I bet Daniel's going to wish us all a good morning, right? Bon matin à tous. Good morning, everyone. Where do I sats? I was celebrating. I'll give you, just before we get going, let me just give you a brief production warning. I got a child still asleep. This is a very rare occurrence. It's never happened. It's 8 a.m. Eastern time. I got a kid still asleep. We were doing a little bit of a Fête Saint-Jean party. It was a holiday in Quebec yesterday. So I ended up in Burlington, Vermont with some Quebecers and, just having a good time. Kids playing. It was a great time. We were out late, all the rest of it. So believe it or not, she's sleeping. So the production note is that at some point she's going to wake up and be a little confused about where people are. So I might have to pause and walk her, to see her mother and sister who are in the playroom. So there you go. Let me just warn you about a production note before we get going. But indeed, as I mentioned, it's 8 a.m. right, Eastern time. We got a sun that is totally up. Bitcoin totally running. All that's left for us to do is have a coffee and talk about what's new, right? I love when people sometimes in questions ask me, I've seen it in the thread before, like, what are you going to do if the sun isn't up and Bitcoin isn't running? Well, we're not going to do a show that day. I think I've explained that before, right? We've got bigger problems. So there you go. Now I know what you're here for, right? You want some fake news, some Moscow time. We got a special guest who supplied a lot of the Moscow time today, but I'm going to do my own versions before I get to Saifadian, who looks like he's going to try and get a Moscow time of his own going. He's not calling it Moscow time, but it's Moscow time. So this first one here is from The View. The View. It's got all those ladies. We're going to be talking about ladies a bit today, by the way. The Long House and some stuff that Cernovich wrote. But this is what she says. This is one of the ladies on The View named Anna Navarro. She says, the Hunter Biden scandal, it's also a story of a father's love, right? He is a father first, take it or leave it, right? It's true. Now, we all love New York pizza, right? I miss New York City. It was a great time in my life. Beautiful place. Sucks now, as I'm told. Apparently getting better the past few days or past few weeks or months or whatever. I have no plans on moving back, especially now that I read this. Mamma mia, New York City rules crack down on coal, wood-fired pizzerias. They must cut carbon emissions up to 75%. They did this in Montreal too with the bagels, but what I don't understand is I can actually still get the wood-fired bagels all over Montreal. So what is this thing about there's no more wood-fired stuff? Is it going to be the same in New York? We don't know. Time will tell. But, we got to stop that global warming. I heard Greta came to New York and she saw people making pizza and was like, oh my God, we're going to have to end the world a year earlier from her predictions, which were last week, by the way. We weren't going to make it. But I will say, a lot of people were saying Greta had predicted the world was over or whatever a few days ago. That was kind of fake news on the other end, right? So on the other end, she didn't say that the world was ending. So I'm going to defend Greta for a minute, right? Greta did say that if we didn't do something by last week, and that was 5 years ago. So if we didn't do something in 5 years by that day, the world's going to end. She didn't say the world was going to end in 5 years. So be careful, right? Now I get it. Like, people like to share stuff about Greta, how she's feeling, how she's doing. She got arrested again, right? She got arrested again. I don't know how she's doing. I don't really personally care, obviously. Probably not happy about what's going on in Sweden. I don't know if you noticed, we mentioned it yesterday, that Sweden is going to be done with all of its carbon, whatever, capture, markets, global warming targets. So we'll see. But you got to defend Greta when she's not that wrong, right? She wasn't that wrong. Well, she's wrong in fact, but the way people were making fun of her, saying that she predicted the world would be over, it's not exactly what happened, but all in good fun, I guess. Now let's get into Saifedean's Moscow time. So Saifedean has a thread going. It's been going for well over a year now. And he adds, so he predicted about a year ago that the mental gymnastics required for fiat bugmen to keep up with explaining the world around them would become entertaining. So he believed it was going to become a genre of entertainment, just like we've got the RFK Jr. genre of Moscow time now. We saw that Saifedean predicted, and now he's compiled a list of Moscow time, all based on the mental gymnastics that fiat bugmen use to explain inflation by avoiding talking about increasing the money supply as the cause of inflation, right? Because that's not what they want to talk about. So here's the collection of reasons why we have inflation, according to Moscow time, brought to us by Saifedean, curated by Saifedean. So here's what he says. The first one, this is back, I don't know if Greta is going to be happy about this. This is about Stockholm. This is about Sweden, right? So we'll see. Beyonce blamed for stubbornly high Swedish inflation. It's Beyonce's fault. Bills. Singer Stockholm show drives up hotel prices, contributing to higher than expected reading for May. So that was Beyonce. She did it to Sweden. We're not done. This is in Poland, in front of the central bank. The main causes for inflation. Number 1, Russian aggression in Ukraine. Number 2, the pandemic and its consequences. And so each one of these, Saifedean puts the note, daily reminder that a fiat economist is someone who will believe anything causes price rises except an increase in the money supply. Let's keep going. The Toronto Star, the new normal. High food costs are the new normal as labor shortages and extreme climate events continue to plague the sector, right? And Mark Carney, the biggest financial loser in the history of the world. I've explained that to everyone here. Mark Carney once had $150 trillion promised and allocated for his green stuff when he left the Bank of England. It's down to very little, so he's already lost at least 100 and something trillion, right? So you tell me if he's not the biggest financial loser in the history of the world, right? So here's what he says. Brexit is to blame for inflation, claims Mark Carney, right? So it's Brexit, right? That's what he says. The biggest financial loser of all time says Brexit did it. Here's another one. What caused U.S. pandemic era inflation? Ben Bernanke and Olivier Blanchard lay out how it started with supply side constraints and has now shifted to labor market tightness. All right, guys, it was supply side constraints that it shifted to labor market tightness. All right, so there you go. And I didn't know, but Saifedean parle français. Il dit un économiste du fiat est quelqu'un qui croit qu'absolument toute cause de l'inflation à l'exception de la croissance de la masse monétaire. So what he's saying is, he translated exactly, daily reminder that your fiat economist will say anything to explain away price rises. And this is what from François Gerolf. He says, encore une fois, l'inflation vient surtout de l'énergie et de l'alimentation, y compris dans le corps via le mécanisme de diffusion. So what he's saying here is that it's inflation is above all created by energy costs and food costs. So in France, it's energy and food again. We've got more though. We're not done. So Jeremy Hunt, he's the I guess he does something in the UK, who cares? He says, I know how much hurting families and businesses across the country, but why is inflation particularly high in the UK, especially food prices? So he says, firstly, a supply chain shock has bounced as we bounce back from the pandemic. Then it's Putin and the war in Ukraine. Of course, it's them. Here's another one. This one's good, guys. This one's good. This is as good as they get, right? So this is from just a few days ago. It's in the Telegraph. The Legend of Zelda computer game release blamed for shock inflation spike. Zelda, Link to the Past. Zelda, you son of a bitch. So that one's pretty good. The New York Times from a couple days ago. Economists warn a summer of fun could lead to an autumn of pain. Don't you have fun this summer, guys? Don't you spend that money? because it's a summer, it's an autumn of pain that's coming. So below that is consumers are splurging on expensive but fun experiences from nights out to concerts, and that may force central banks to keep raising rates. This comes from the Dealbook. It's a special section in the New York Times, and we're going to be talking about the Dealbook in 1 second. I think it's the final one. No, I've got two more. I've got two. Zelda's good. Daniel says Zelda and Beyonce. I got a better one. We're not done. We got more. We got the boring one here. IMF. You know, they're not that cool with the Zelda and Beyonce, but it's corporate profits, of course, right? So it's corporate profits, those sons of bitches. But not to be outdone, right? Because with divas, right? It's not just Beyonce. It's not just Beyonce. It's not just her, right? The Financial Review, opinion: the pop stars concert have a knack of setting off mini waves of inflation. And this is the Taylor Swift version of inflation. So you got the Taylor Swift inflation and the Beyonce inflation. They're not the same, apparently, right? It's only sometimes, but those are the two big ones, right? So those are the two big ones. So that's what we got. Thank you, Saifadian. And he does ask for people to contribute to the Twitter thread. So it's been going on for over a year. If you have one, if you come across one in the wild, if you see some broken brain fiat person saying, "Oh, it was all of the, Halloween candy," I predict you're going to see one at Halloween. Halloween candy causes inflation. Zelda's blamed, man. Yeah, and P-Man Van says, "You plebs better not have any fun this summer." The fun in the summer is a good one too. Come on, the fun in the summer is a good one, right? Don't have fun this summer. It's like an Aesop fable, right? They're really relying on the Aesop fables here. If anyone doesn't know what an Aesop fable is, it's these animals that ran around the world and did a bunch of stupid shit. But like an example would be, oh, I was supposed to gather my nuts all summer and I'm a squirrel, and now I didn't gather my nuts, so I got to try and live in someone's house or something. It's just stupid stories. They're fun. I'm not sure if everyone in the world grew up with Aesop fables. That's why I mentioned them that way. But they're just these silly little parables. Exactly what the New York Times is selling, right? An Aesop fable. So let's go back. We mentioned the Dealbook, right? That was the Summer of Fun one, right? So that's the Dealbook saying summer of fun could lead to an autumn of pain. So I have a weird connection to Dealbook, which is that as many of you know, I worked for CoinDesk in its early iteration when it came to New York City. So I was in New York City from 2016, roughly, when I started, and was there till about 2020, right? And so I left CoinDesk at the very start of the pandemic. So the CEO of CoinDesk to this day was a fella who had worked in the 1990s at the New York Times, when he got out of the Harvard Business School and all that stuff. So he worked at the New York Times with Andrew Ross Sorkin, so who is the founder of Dealbook and sold that to the New York Times, which is how he ended up having some role, whatever it is, with the New York Times. Andrew Ross Sorkin currently hosts Squawk Box. So because of that connection, I used to actually go on Squawk Box quite a bit when I lived in New York those years. So it was a cool experience. You'd get a Yukon, like a black car service, right? The big black cars would come to your house and pick you up and drive around. It was a great time, right? I'd go do all these TV hits, and I'd do Squawk Box quite a bit. My only regret that I ever had is that I said no to Squawk Box one time because I was out of town. And I said, well, I really would like to go on this one. I forget, was probably some tether FUD, right? I used to go and do a lot of tether FUD ones, right? And probably something like that. And I said, nah, I gotta hold off. I can't make it to this one. It was the summer of 2018. Had I gone that day, it just so happened that Bill Murray was on the show. So I would have been in the green room with Bill Murray, and he was there to defend the Trump budget and all kinds of weird shit. He just came out of nowhere to have a bunch of say and all this stuff. So that's just a small detour in storytelling, but one of my regrets of my time in New York that I didn't make it that day. So this guy, Andrew Ross Sorkin, yesterday had on our favorite, and to tie it back to Saifuddin, to Nassim Taleb. So Taleb was on Squawk Box yesterday, and he beclowned himself. It was hilarious. So we talk a lot about cognitive dissonance here and the signs of it, right? You can sort of, it looks like you're punch drunk for a second, and then a word salad, and none of it really makes sense. And you're like, what are you talking about? So it was great because he goes on the show yesterday, and he's dealing with Joe Kernan and Andrew Ross Sorkin. And if you look at it, right, if you watch the video as I did, I'm not sure if it was a special edit or something, but the interviewers, they look like they're not very impressed with his intelligence level. And they look at him as if he's currently having a stroke. You could see in their minds, they're recalculating everything they thought about him as he's talking about Bitcoin, because he just is making no sense. It sounds like word salad gibberish. In the end, his huge conclusion, the big upshot of all of it, is that, oh, great, we finally got Fed now. So he's all into the Fed Reserve. These are just a few of the things that people said, right? So Alan B. Watts says, CNBC is now defending Bitcoin from Nassim Taleb's intellectually dishonest critiques. Because even Andrew Ross Sorkin is like, well, you say that, but, come on, it's been around for, whatever, 13, 14 years. It keeps bouncing back. It keeps coming. Like, what are you talking about here, Taleb? But he couldn't handle it. I mean, he couldn't handle, this was a playful jab, right, that Sorkin gave him. And he was punch drunk, stunned, right? And he starts saying, oh, Fed Now is coming out this summer, right? I can't wait. Like, he's trying to hype up Fed Now. And so a lot of people picked up on it. Alex Thorne says, so this is Intangible Coins said, this is an ugly performance from Taleb. This man used to be influential. Look how confused and embarrassed the CNBC hosts are with his arguments. That's what I saw. Right now. We could talk about it all the time. I could be seeing my own movie in my own head because I understand these predispositions, but it looks, to me anyway, like he did make them feel uncomfortable, and they were recalculating their estimations of intelligence in real time. That's what I saw. I saw them looking at Taleb the way a lot of people might look at Biden when he has a sundowner moment, right? Now, I'm not saying Taleb has any mental faculty lost. He's not, I don't think anyway, he's in the same category as Biden. Oh, there's that child. 1 second. Woke up. Thanks, everyone. So BTC Sessions comes in and says, wow, even the most incoherent Bitcoin Twitter shitposter could dismantle Taleb's arguments here. Embarrassing indeed. Kaiser says, I tried to pitch him Bitcoin. He didn't get it. Like, he's not smart enough. Stefan Lavera says, Taleb goes in to bat for the Federal Reserve, right? So a lot of people picking up here on just how stupid the guy sounded, right? Just how dumb he sounded. And, that's mostly what I saw. I saw someone who had severe cognitive dissonance in that moment, right? And that's what it looks like. You're dealing with ego, you're dealing with all of these things. And when you hear someone struggling in that way, that's kind of what you're looking for. I mean, that's a lot of what we do in this morning space together, is sort of diagnose when we see that at scale happening in society. Now, this was just one of these perfect examples of someone who had a lot of trouble making sense because they put their ego ahead of all of it, right? Now, this symptom of putting your ego ahead of all of it and not being able to see things clearly and falling into one of these cognitive dissonance traps, right? It reminds me of basically the entire reaction to RFK's muscly weightlifting thing, right? So we talked about it yesterday. RFK, of course, over the weekend had a bunch of videos that went like mega viral, right? And that was basically just him showing off his his muscles and his exercise regimen, right? And he happened to be there with a Bitcoiner, Kraken's own personal finance coach, super cool guy. He actually DM'd me yesterday after I mentioned him on the show. I had, one interaction with him before, but it was super beneficial, verified what I was up to for my own exercise regime. Super nice guy. So Cernovich here talked about the reaction to it, right? So I even noticed, I think Jeremy in the comments on YouTube said, I think Cernovich was being sarcastic. He wasn't, right? That was my reading. I could see why someone would think Cernovich was being sarcastic. But if you know a little bit about Cernovich's appetite for health based on testosterone replacement and things like that, you'd know he was being sincere, right? So he wrote his The Other Side of Fear post on Substack yesterday. This is a thing that Cernovich does, and he called it RFK Jr. Sun and Steel, When the Bugs Come Out. And he says, when I saw a video of a jacked and tan RFK Jr., 7 years old, lifting at Golds in Venice, I thought, cool. First, I retweeted so he got the video credit. Then I embedded the video in my original commentary. Boy, did the bugs come out, right? He's only lifting 115 pounds. He's on TRT, testosterone replacement treatment. Why is he wearing jeans? I can lift way more than that. And so Cernovich says Bugman is a concept floating around online. And what he calls the Bugman is a rootless, lifeless metropolitan drone who have a permanent 1,000-yard stare due to an existence void of any meaning other than waiting for the next iPhone. Ouch. Other than waiting for the next iPhone. And he says, C.S. Lewis had a similar concept known as a hollow man. We make men without chests and expect from them virtue and enterprise. We laugh at honor and are shocked to find traitors in our midst. C.S. Lewis, The Abolition of Man. That was where this quote came from. These are high-minded ways of describing an instinct we feel when confronted with the modern man. He doesn't feel human. He looks and acts like someone who would be fine with a feed stack strapped to his face and a fleshlight on his lower parts, existing in some venial way, taking up space, no vibe, no spirit, no energy. Millions of them were out for that RFK Jr. video. A few comments on the RFK video. The replies reminded me how utterly joyless most people are. They can't be happy for another man. I was called a homosexual several times for posting the video. If you ever encourage or respect another man, you are a fanboy or riding his jock. Who told you that? Feminists? They want you in the longhouse being scolded, right? And he says, what is the longhouse? The most important feature of the longhouse and why it makes such a resonant and controversial symbol of our current circumstances is the ubiquitous rule of the den mother. More than anything, the longhouse refers to the remarkable overcorrection of the last two generations towards social norms, centering feminine needs and feminine methods for controlling, directing, and modeling behavior. It's also bizarre to compare yourself to a 7-year-old man to feel strong. If you are strong, do powerlifting meets. You are not counting weight on another man's bar. So he goes on to sort of explain, watching someone do one working set doesn't tell you much. Maybe he got off the plane, maybe he wanted some fresh air. Sort of just puts it all in context. Anyone who has lifted knows this stuff, basic, right? It's like where Ryan said, why is this man working out in jeans? And his answer was, every man who knows what it's like to have 100 things to get done in a day knows why we sometimes get a lift done in jeans, right? Now, I don't like working out in jeans. I would probably not work out if I didn't have the choice, but I set my life up so I don't actually miss working out because I would never have to wear jeans to all that stuff. But if I was on a presidential campaign trail, yeah, why not, right? But this idea of the Bugman that Cernovich is referring to here, so it even comes into sort of more of a argument after. So it's not just what Cernovich said there. You have Kevin Bass, so this medical guy, big long thread about how actually he's on steroids and you can't do this thing where it's like, I'm against pharma, but I'm also on steroids, right? He's a hypocrite, the whole hypocrite thing. And he comes out, Kevin Bass, which one of these men looks healthier? And he puts the Hotez RFK contrast, right? But is he healthier if he is using steroids? So everyone's sort of weighing in. Cernovich saying Hotez is almost certainly a type 2 diabetic already. If he's not, he's pre-diabetic. His lack of muscle mass means his pancreas is shot. He is one fall away from a broken hip. Look at the mortality associated with falls. Just a second. So indeed, right? So he says, look at the mortality associated with falls. You need to really do some reading, PhD, right? So this guy, Kevin Bass, right? So I don't even think I took the whole thing here, but I did take what Cernovich said to him when he goes into talking about testosterone replacement theory may risk in the increase of cardiovascular events in aging men with low testosterone levels. And Cernovich says, why are you such an effing idiot? You can't look at one risk factor in isolation. What are other causes of death in elderly? Falls, metabolic dysfunction, muscle from TRT mitigates both of those. Go back to being a COVIDian, calling the cops on businesses for curfew violations. So, the contrast here between what's healthy and what's a bug man, and who's sitting there saying, oh, he's too muscular for a 7-year-old, he must be cheating, right? Now, I do not take testosterone replacement. I haven't really looked into it, but I have said to a lot of older people, right, I've noticed the symptoms. I've was a big proponent in the early era of testosterone replacement, which was probably like 10 years ago when people started to really talk about it, or even, sort of 15 years ago is when I started mentioning it to people. Just understanding that, males didn't really deal with their version of menopause. In males, that's called andropause, right? We don't really talk about it as much as maybe women do. Probably women are better at discussing their health problems. And, as a Canadian, I always sort of pride myself on never going to the doctor and all these kinds of things because it's a big hassle and it's so stupid and all that. But the first time I went to the doctor in the United States, where you're actually paying the money and you find out what a doctor can do as far as blood work and just like preventative medicine to actually get a gauge on your health, like there's no such service in Canada. I had never actually been to the doctor other than in like broken bones and shit, which is what Canada is the only thing it's good for, right? Kids with, really bad sicknesses or broken bones or all that's all fine for that, right? But just, thinking about it in that way, that's how I see it. So, the RFK story gets a little more interesting as well, because he goes on Bill Maher yesterday or 2 days ago. So we got to give credit to Bill Maher, by the way. Bill Maher, if you guys don't know who he is, a total liberal, right? Had a bit of Trump derangement syndrome, but he's got to be counted as one of the great free speech advocates. He was never someone out there, taking cheap shots, let's say. There's enough with Trump to complain about, and he was one of the people that would complain about it, but not a kind of person who would play unfair, let's say. Put it this way. He's one of the few Democrat liberal voices that remain consistent that I still find a lot of value in referencing and thinking about and whatever, right? So Bill Maher actually, and he's got a big following. I think he's super influential inside Democrat circles. Had RFK on his blog. It's not his Real Time with Bill Maher HBO show. He's got his own, I don't know what it is, podcast or something. And so Bill Maher comes out and says, is RFK's position on vaccines that unreasonable? Right? It's about the safety of it and all those kinds of things. Bill Maher applauds RFK's Jr. courageous stand on the vaccine issue. That to me is a pair of balls, he says. Whether you're right or wrong, I think you're mostly right about this issue, especially the vaccine issue. The guts and the integrity to take the stand and stick to your guns when media, you lose the New York Times, family, that to me is a pair of balls. You could tell they were friends in a previous era, though. They sort of made jokes within the podcast, Bill Maher gave him a book about his uncle who died, not JFK, but another one, and says, did you ever see this book? And he says, it's a private printing. And then RFK accuses Bill Maher as a joke of stealing from his home the last time he was there. Did you steal this from my house? This was a private printing. How did you get this book? So you could tell they had this friendship beforehand, right? So the point here, though, is that they had this conversation, and now you're starting to see people like Bill Maher entering the conversation in a way that could be super useful, and I'll explain why. So the whole thing about health and the whole thing about, even what Taleb is saying, oh, we get the Fed now thing, right? The Fed now. The whole thing about comparing the people participating in these systems, the people propagating these systems, whether it is health, on either the end that we recognize with Ryan and RFK Jr., lift weights, keep it simple, or the other folks, right? Eat all this poison food and all this garbage. And actually, guess what? We also now have a pill that will solve fatness, right? So you get a guy, and this is this new, you hear about this new fat pill going around, right? Now, we don't fat shame, right? And if it works for you, maybe. But remember what's actually being said here, right? It's you get Americans who are super obese and have no nutritional understanding about what's going on, right? So the system that is there now looks like this. It is literally, remember the fake food pyramid that poisoned you, and all of your food is poisoned, and everything you're going to eat is actual poison, filled with sugar and seed oils and everything else. Okay, we're not going to bother with that. We're just going to actually build a new pill on top of that, right? So the pharmaceutical industry preying on fat bug people, which we've known for a long time, right? But remember, the fat bug people that are getting influenced by propaganda, that are getting enticed by desire, and are getting hypnotized by food marketing, right? Just look at what goes into the production of a McDonald's commercial. It's high art, right? Aesthetically, it's bad, but the amount of effort put in to entice people and cognitively entice them into consuming this stuff and getting them addicted to it is unparalleled, right? We are dealing with major drug dealers at every turn in American society right now. And when you start thinking about what Bitcoin offers as far as change to the system, our good friend Hugo Nguyen, Hugo Hanoi. So Hugo Hanoi, if you don't follow him at Hugo Hanoi, you got to. So first of all, Hugo Hanoi is behind the nunchuck thing in Bitcoin. He's also probably the most coherent critic of Ethereum from a technical level that you'll ever hear. And by coherent, I mean you don't have to read a mile-long explanation of what's wrong with Ethereum to understand what's wrong with Ethereum if you read Hugo. You can hear a lot of Bitcoiners explaining the problems with Ethereum, and fine, right? But if you want the notes, if you want to really get what's effective about where it's being manipulated and all that, go read Hugo Hanoi, one of the smartest people in the business. I've actually never met him. One of the few people that's sort of been around, contributing, doing interesting things, and I haven't met him, but huge fan. Always read his tweets. So he mentioned something today. He says the term most succinctly and precisely describes Bitcoin, in my opinion, is neither freedom nor money, but social scalability. And he's referencing, of course, Nick Szabo. So Nick Szabo in 2017 wrote a piece about social scalability. So Nick Szabo in that era in his enumerated blog, whenever he wrote something, the whole industry sort of paused, right? And I remember he wrote this, and I was in the newsroom at CoinDesk at the time when we were in Times Square. Yeah, it's a great wallet. Yeah. Johnny says Numchuck is a great wallet. So Hugo's behind that, right? So very smart guy, really smart guy. We were all in this little crammed office in Times Square, and this article came out, and I'm telling you, the whole room went silent. Like, we just read it like intently. It's super long. One of the most interesting things you'll ever read. I'm not sure if it's the last long blog post he ever wrote, He hasn't produced much since then. He sort of got really involved in politics and then went a bit dark after, let's say. I don't mean dark as a negative. I mean, he disappeared-ish, doesn't participate as much as he did before. So, so the point here he's going on, and I'll explain what it means, right? So this social scalability article that he wrote in 2017 really affected me. I was keeping a lot of that stuff, sort of in my head for years after, and I use it as a reference to understand a lot of the things as it came into the industry. So here's what he says, right? Here's what Hugo says. Money is just another tool to help us at cooperation games. Freedom of exchange is also just a stepping stone to better cooperation models. Speaking of which, maybe it's just me, but I feel like well, he's going into, we're not getting enough done as Bitcoiners. There's not enough, good content because we don't have people like Nick Szabo is participating as much anymore. So here's Nick Szabo describing what social scalability is. Social scalability is the ability of an institution, a relationship, or shared endeavor in which multiple people repeatedly participate and featuring customs, rules, or other features which constrain or motivate participants' behaviors to overcome shortcomings in human minds and in motivating or constraining aspects of said institution that limit who or how many successfully participate. Social scalability is about the ways and extents to which participants can think about and respond to institutions and fellow participants as the variety and numbers of participants in those institutions or relationships grow. It's about human limitations, not about technological limitations or physical resource constraints. So it's essentially about the trade-offs with Bitcoin, right? We're not going to beat Visa, right? The brilliant trade-off is that Bitcoin intentionally buys something more valuable, which is social scalability, which is the ability to use it without what we talk about, right? Like, look what social scalability of the fiat system has done to savings, right? In order to have savings, you have to be able to beat the bankers, the policymakers, everybody, right? You've got to be able to beat everybody just to save money. You got to buy a house. You got to buy a house in the right area. You got to buy a house near the right school district in America, because of course, America, the elementary, middle, and high schools are all tied to the local tax base. The local tax base has everything to do with who owns homes there. So that's one of the hugest barriers to entry in America for home ownership. Not necessarily the price of any old home, the price of a home in a good school district. For foreigners who are unaware, the very famous show in America, Beverly Hills 90210. If you remember the 90s, it was like the biggest teen show in the 90s in America. Well, the 90210 is just the zip code of Beverly Hills. That's it, right? Because that was the whole game. The whole game was about being in that zip code, going to the local schools. And so the social scalability of saving money in America, because of the institutions we have, goes through all of these things. When we talk about the weakening or the lessening of IQ required to participate in modern society, we're talking about social scalability, right? That's what we're actually talking about. Now, remember, the social scalability that Bitcoin gets into is the trusted third-party model. That's why it's a P2P model, right? You have to pull the third party out of the financial relationship. But interestingly, Bitcoin actually extends this P2P model throughout all of society. That's why it's socially scalable. And you can see it in things like the RFK workout with Ryan in the Gold's Gym in Venice, simply because Bitcoiners creating a P2P market for information, right? We get information from each other. We've removed trusted third parties as far as corporate media goes when it comes to explaining healthcare to us. COVID helped us do that, right? COVID was a big reason for which this was even possible. So the whole point of this social scalability aspect and the ability of these people to navigate, a world without banks extends to people navigating a world without health news, let's say, right? Because we've seen for a long time that the scalability of healthcare going through these trusted third parties of doctors the scalability of it becomes so difficult. You got to do your own research. Imagine, do your own research. What are you talking about? I'm not going to become a pharmacological expert. I'm not. Like, I don't want to. I have no interest in pharmaceuticals. Like, am I going to go and learn the nomenclature behind organic chemistry just so that I can participate in health? No. Social scalability is what it comes down to. You need trusted people in your network, and that's why Bitcoin has resisted the bugmen, right? That's why we are not fueled by bugmen. We don't have stupid people trying to push Bitcoin forward. In general, we have smart, playable characters. That's why NPCs do not join our ranks. That's why they get shaken out whenever needed, right, by market forces and whatever. The reason these things happen, and the reason why Bitcoiners are still at the table and Bitcoiners are surviving market turbulations and time and all of these things, is simply because our system is socially scalable. We're all kind of looking out for each other, not in a way that is contrary to human normal motivations. We're kind of doing it for ourselves, right? Which is what Satoshi understood. Satoshi understood how humans actually operate. He's not asking us to be disciplined. He's not asking anything other than just be human beings and use the network. And the social scalability of it is exactly what Nick Szabo is describing here. It's the way people interact with this institution and the way they secure these commercial relationships, the way they secure these contractual interactions and what they produce, which is good content, which is useful information, which is the ability to not get spun by fake news, by psyops. I mean, how many Bitcoiners were, confused, let's say? How many Bitcoiners were confused about Ukraine and what was going on in Wagner, right? The answer is zero. We don't care, right? Bitcoiners simply do not get caught up in this, just like the COVID stuff, right? Bitcoiners, now, the one problem with Bitcoiners, some of them got really angry about all this stuff. We can understand why they would get angry about it. There were other things we could have done, right? But the whole idea is there you go, BTC Cast. So the whole idea is that folks can scale into the network. And it's not just about the cognitive load of being able to save money. It's the cognitive load about how to be healthy, right? Again, do we take health advice from people with diabetes and that are in danger of one fall ending their life, right? With the HOTES situation, or 70-year-old men who are jacked and ripped. Now, again, bring it back to the testosterone replacement thing, right? Everyone's saying, oh, you can't use medicine if you criticize medicine, right? But no one ever said that, right? No, that's not even what he's saying. The NPCs out there, the bugmen, the people who can't put two thoughts together, say, well, you said medicine is bad, so now you're using medicine, right? Well, it makes no sense. Medicine attached with psyops, non-transparent motivations, all those things about trusted third parties that Satoshi warns us about in the white paper extend to all facets of society, to everything, including healthcare. You need to follow the money to understand what's going on in healthcare. And that's all I see RFK doing. I don't see RFK out there saying medicine is bad. I'm saying you need to follow the money. That's what I hear him saying. You need to follow the money to find out where you're being manipulated. And he says he has some answers. He's followed the money more than most because, as he says in many of his interviews, my family helped set up a lot of this stuff. Remember, his own granddaddy set up the SEC. He does have a lot of influence and understanding in how things were set up in America. I love hearing stories about when he was a kid, for example, because he was right in the middle of all this. He was even telling stories on the Bill Maher podcast about LBJ showing up at his house and spies showing up at his house and things his dad said to him and lessons he's learned. And he had a pretty tough life up until 14 years old, if you actually add it up, or interesting anyway, right? Interesting and tough. Not an easy thing he was given in life. So there you go. We've got, the idea of social scalability. We've got the way it fits into finance, the way it fits into media, our understanding, our sharing information, our own understanding of health. But it goes even one step further, and this is sort of the last piece for the day, and I think the most important, right? We've understood that the manipulation, the lack of trust in healthcare, the lack of trust in food supply, the lack of trust in banking, all of that, right, can be contrasted with what's going on in El Salvador. And what's going on in El Salvador now, after Bukele came and all those kinds of things, are the following. You're starting to see the social scalability of El Salvador overnight, right? Just last week, we had Ted Cruz, who came, right? Senator Ted Cruz from the United States. He goes there in a way that looks like a freedom pilgrimage, right? You get all of a sudden a guy like Ted Cruz from Texas heading over to El Salvador and saying like, wow, what an amazing place. You've done tons for safety and security. We could use this relationship to make America better. Stacey Herbert says, in just 4 years, President Bukele has transformed El Salvador into the safest country in the Americas. Tourism is booming and investors are betting by the billions on our policy of economic liberty. And all the best and brightest and most powerful see that we are winning, right? You get Sophia Zoller saying here, 199 million of investor capital poured into digital investment products last week. And this is all into El Salvador, right? So ton of money coming into El Salvador, people showing up there, industries growing, right? We're seeing social scalability at a level that we could only imagine in words when Szabo first wrote about it. But El Salvador is becoming a prime example of Bitcoin's social scalability at a structural level in society, right? A whole country orienting people, like the same thing that RFK is saying about health, for example, right? Again, RFK, what he said about vaccines the other day, that we need Americans, when his video went viral for the health thing, he came out and said, look, the worst thing we could have done for COVID was sit in fear and sit in lockdowns. Fear, of course, weakens your immune system. He talked about getting exercise and getting sun and getting out there. There's only one other world leader who spoke like that during COVID. One, and it was Bukele. So the social scalability of the low IQ, but better for you health approach of get some sun, get some exercise, eat well, right? Doesn't require a ton of IQ, is almost the same situation we see with money, right? Save your money. It shouldn't be more complicated than that. That's social scalability right there. Social scalability is save your money. It shouldn't be hard. We made it hard. We made it all hard. The social scalability of fiat is over. It's just going to create more bugmen. It's just going to create more people like Taleb that have broken brains, that cannot view the world around them, that have to throw out word salad, like this doctor saying, oh, don't take testosterone replacement, right? It's steroids. Of course it's not, right? So there you go. That's what we got for today. Let's see what the comments say. All right. We got a guy named Bjorn Degen, who looks a little retarded. I don't know what his problem is. He says that the ranting is embarrassing for you. I am embarrassed, apparently. He's embarrassed for me. Great, Bjorn. Go be a NPC elsewhere. If you want news about like Bitcoin price went up, and also Ethereum went up, altcoins are gonna moon. Go for it, Bjorn Degen. Go be a Degen. Taleb is indeed a clown. Have a good day, gentlemen. Yeah, that's what it's all about. Buy stats and stay humble. Don't be worried about getting embarrassed, by the way, guys. Not being afraid of embarrassment is how I became a Bitcoiner, and how many of you, I believe, also became Bitcoiners. And it's our superpower, right? It's how we got through all of these crazy market upturns and downturns. But Bjorn Degen, is probably too low IQ to figure that out. Black Swan is a good book. Yeah, this is a high IQ environment, by the way. If you have a low IQ, you probably should go watch another show. BitBoy does a lot of content, by the way, Bjorn Degen. You can go. BitBoy's content is awesome. He's got a new coin drop. You can get it. It's awesome. I don't know if he's going to give you health advice, though. I'm waiting for RFK is a Nazi sympathizer articles to start. They'll do those. I haven't even heard him. Yeah, the granddaddy had some. They're going to come. The granddaddy wasn't not a super anti-Nazi, by the way. Well, he wasn't part of the gang that was funding them. He's not part of that gang. But he and was, his dad was the ambassador to England when they were young. RFK Sr.'s dad was the ambassador to England for a little while after he set up the SEC and went and became the ambassador to England just before and during the war. But things, as I understand, were a little complicated. I don't know the whole story. So Gold 106 says Taleb sounds like a moron. This was illustrated by his brainwashing of COVID and his distaste for Bitcoin. Yeah. Well, you still have to give him. So the one thing I'll still give Taleb credit for, he's got a couple good quotes. He's got a couple good quotes that are worthwhile. But he probably plagiarized them at this point, right? And if you listen to Saifedean will tell you. So I had Saifedean on a show on the halving, right? I had him on the 2020 halving, and I interviewed him. And this was what we talked about, right? We said, like, you were breaking up with Taleb. I asked, what's going to happen? And already then he knew Taleb was an idiot. Not everyone had keyed in yet. Not everyone had seen him take money from Satoshi's Vision, BSV. That was the end of that guy's reputation, I would think. Nunchuck is a great wallet. Yeah, it's every day for on-chain. Yeah, it is great. Yeah, Johnny. And that Hugo guy is worth following. Absolutely. I was in music to advertising industry for 14 years. It's absolutely disgusting the amount of manipulation and lack of morals that goes on into making an ad. Fiat is all that counts. Yep. That is the actual social scalability argument right there. Assalamu alaikum. Some good ideas today for Satoshi Wedding Chapter 2. I might put it out today. It's kind of ready. I might want to take one more look at the video. Number 3 is pretty much ready. I took a bit of a break from it the past couple days. I was just too busy. I'm a little behind my normal schedule, but I owe you guys Satoshi Wedding Murders content because you helped me all get to 1,000 subs, which I'm super appreciative. Richard Bose says, is so dopey it's unreal. Well, Richard, if you think that, then you should go take a trip to Canada, and they got really good medicine. You can get it there. It's awesome. I think it comes in a needle. Right? Peace be with you. You're saying a Ponzi scheme is better than the US dollar. Got it. I think we've got a broken brain person here, Richard. I think we've got a broken brain. Here's a point. Bitcoin isn't socially scalable at all. Okay, Richard. All right. Up early to watch live for once. We love it, BTC Cassidy. Love having you here, man. Why is the network growing and more people are joining every day then? Yeah. Incentives align in a Bitcoin world, unlike a fiat world. That's exactly it. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Morning Killa. We got it. Yeah, we got a nice visitor this morning. Improve your playable character and acquire Satoshis. That's exactly the game. That is the whole game. That's the whole game. That's the whole game. Follow the patent filings. Yeah, that's probably a decent idea. That's something that I learned about when I was studying Michael Crichton so much. He was a big believer in that. That's why I wrote my law school thesis on gene patenting. So there you go. Medicine and medicine used for more control. Yeah, that's the right way to put it, Yellow. If you're talking about the distinction that people are trying to make, that, oh, RFK's a steroid user, but he also criticizes medicine. How can you criticize medicine and take medicine? Social mobility. Yeah, not exactly social scalability. Social scalability is more about, like I said, the IQ required to save money, right? Like, should we live in is it socially scalable to require an IQ of 130 to participate in American society, which is pretty much the game now. Like, you got to be really smart, like really smart, right? And it doesn't mean useful. It means smart in like a horsepower IQ way, right? You got to be able to crunch numbers and pump it out and beat, faceless voids. So not easy. The South American immigrants I meet around my city, I walk up and ask them about El Salvador and Bukele. They almost all get giant smiles on their face and start telling me how proud they are. Yeah, I've seen articles of people trying to, like, kids, for example, that have never even lived in El Salvador, that have only lived in America, are now looking forward to going back to El Salvador because it's become mythical and America's so shit right now. Now, remember, we are very bullish on America. But we're going through World War III is, downtown America right now. So Mexico wasn't that scared of COVID. Neither was Belarus and 1/3 of America. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. Yeah. I missed Kyle's first statement. I don't know what I don't know what that's about. So many broken brains. Yeah, there are. I just sold all my Bitcoin for Ben token. Do it. Yeah, let's get the Ben token. Yeah, Taleb was paid to speak against BTC. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was talking about. The BSV thing that he jumped into, right? I don't like, and I also don't like that picking and choosing what. Yeah, Mr. Bitcoin, I'm 100% not on board with the use the SEC to smash Ethereum and crypto. I'm, as a Bitcoiner that wants to see accelerationism and a Bitcoin standard today, I continue to believe that the best use of Ethereum is to take Wall Street down, to grow the scam. It's got to be bigger, just bigger, right? And if it's not Ethereum, go Solana, go whatever you need, right? Shove it all down the throats of these Series 7 license holders and then leave them with the bag. This is generational economic warfare that we must participate in. We must. I'm not worried about the little guy who put $500 in his Robinhood. I can't handle it. Don't care. And lost it because he bought a shitcoin. The moral side of that, not worth it to me. And they should have bought Bitcoin with their $500. Yeah, well, they'll buy it next time. And if they don't, well, sorry. We got another mission, which is get rid of Wall Street as a institution. And Ethereum I think Ethereum can do that, guys. I really do. You can just layer scam on top of scam. And if you get them with the right scam, and it might be the right one, right? They take the scam and they obliterate themselves. So I'm okay with that, right? I don't want to see it stop. I don't want to see it stop. No, this is not to pump an Ethereum bag. I sold all my Ethereum years and years and years ago. Not interested. Don't care. I got Ethereum in the first place because it was easy to earn in Toronto in 2015 and 2016. Everyone was, sort of paying in Ethereum at that time. And I did work for people. So there you go. But it's not gonna, not like I'm not sitting here forming my worldview on Ethereum. I see it as a useful tool to take out Wall Street. That's me, right? That's just my opinion, but I could be wrong, right? I'm not going to sit here and wish for the SEC to mop up some spilled milk over in a fucking corner, right? I don't give a shit. I'm like, that's just me. You don't have to take my opinion on that. That's how I want to handle it, right? But I'm not advocating people follow my point of view, but that's how I see it, right? Not a big enough scam. BTC Cassidy, your explanations of cognitive dissonance have helped me identify it and point it out to people, which is so fun to see their broken brains try to figure it out. It's funny. But remember, BTC Cassidy, we're all susceptible. right? You're not immune, even if you can see it. So the one problem with cognitive dissonance, even if you know about it, is you still can't see it in yourself. So just pay attention to that. There's always that. You always, to really master cognitive dissonance diagnosis, you have to always leave that stay humble piece that Bitcoin promotes in your brain, right? You have to. You won't be able to use the ability effectively unless you know that there is a problem in our operating system as human beings. It's a structural problem, and there isn't a human immune from it. We all fall for it, right? We all get cognitive dissonance. So it happens to me every day, right? The feeling in your stomach for your own self-diagnosis is the way to figure it out, right? If you get angry because someone says something, stop. Think about it, right? You might just be breaking your brain. You don't want a broken brain. Technically, yeah, it sure is. It's exactly that. It's exactly that. Imagine having nothing better to do than disrespect. Yeah, there's fucked up people, P-Man Van. We love it. We love those people. Have a great day. Oh God. Yeah, see you, bud. Yeah, isn't he big SaaS Finance? I told you. I'm sort of like, because I was saying it the past few days here with all of you, like, you guys should just see how big he is, you know? Big, jacked. You didn't get a sense of that. So there you go. Made in Canada. Yeah. Yellow's getting some hellos. What's up, Yellow? Glad you're here, Yellow. Thanks a lot, man. Watching supposedly smart people like Taleb turn into clown is such a good reminder to stay humble. It so is, Hassan. It really is. Because that's the problem. When I say not being embarrassed is a superpower, staying humble is a superpower. It's really part of the social scalability of Bitcoin. It's for reasons like this, right? It's for reasons like this. It really helps you see him for what he's made of. Mexico was great during the scamdemic. Yeah, I was there just before in 2020, but I wasn't there for any of it. I'm late. I see a lot of uneducated Ponzi fiat lovers here today. We love them, Diesel. We're fans. We're fans. We're fans. Appreciate your well-rounded. Well, thanks, Randmore. Smart people say stupid things all the time. Absolutely, Robert. Yeah. Accelerate. That's where we're at, man. Yeah. Talked to Troy Kraus yesterday / Providential. Yeah, I think I might even have written Troy Kraus yesterday. I wrote him an email trying to get him to Amsterdam. October 12th. By the way, everyone, Amsterdam, October 12th and 13th. If you're there, I'm going to be there. We're going to have a great time. So come around. Like being reminded about being human and to stay humble. Thanks, Boo Bodacious. It's important, man. Cloud, you're convincing me on this ETH blowing. No, guys, stop. Don't tell anyone ETH is a scam. Just Bitcoiners. Don't tell. Just tell your friends and family. We gotta push it. We gotta run it up. We gotta run Ethereum up, and then all of a sudden they're gonna be there. And who is it gonna be? Right? It's those folks. Right? So there you go. There you go. Building more connections. Yeah. Yeah, that's part of the social scalability. All right. I've seen a lot of parallels with Bitcoiners and fitness and nutrition advice. Before I discovered Bitcoin, going down the rabbit hole of fitness, the mainstream advice from the fiat world is insane. It's insane. I learned a lot about the physical fitness part. I was one of these like jog and hurt yourself and, suffer. Didn't really get it. When Chicago, yeah, Tom, I'm a big Chicago fan, like big. Chicago is one of my favorite cities. I don't have what I'm looking for. I have a beautiful Chicago Cubs hat. I'm a huge Chicago fan, so I would love to go soon. But I unfortunately just don't ever have. It never happens. So if it does happen, I'm 100% there. You know what, Tom? It'll probably be next summer because, as I understand, you're going to get the Democrat primary in Chicago and the Republican one in Milwaukee. And I believe, I'm not promising, but I bet you Bitcoin Magazine and myself will go do some content around those events. Because everyone's going to be there. And as I'm predicting, Bitcoin is going to be the #1 subject for the 2024 presidential election. So I think we'll definitely be there. Now, we have no current plans to be there. It's just stuff we talked about and stuff I mentioned. I said we should probably think about being there, and I think it'll happen. So there you go. Seems social scalability is partially about the fact that we can all what we can all do to participate. Yeah, it's about the ease at which you can participate. Like, how easy is it to be inside of Bitcoin, right? What do you have to do? You have to say, I think Bitcoin can do it. Right? I think Bitcoin can be the basis of a better society, and you're in. It's that simple. You're in, right? You might not be in the there's a bit of a high school popularity, whatever, right? You might not know all of the, and what Taleb said. Let's give him one piece of credit when he said it's a cult. True, cult, right? But with benefits, right? With benefits. So there you go. Diesel says, I spent my money on something the government doesn't like. I'm sanctioned. Oh no, Diesel. Money is socially scalable. And indeed, that's why. So that was the point of Szabo's article. It's really long, but I recommend. I mean, if you want the best reading you'll ever have in Bitcoin, ever, it's Nick Szabo's stuff. And it's this one in particular. This was like everyday reference material for me for about a year. The social scalability argument. I mean, anything I had to write, anything I had to say in public. This was when I was going on Squawk Box with, all those people. I was always just sort of reading the Szabo piece on social scalability to try to, frame what was happening. So in the 2017, 2018 times. So there you go. Fun stuff. So money indeed is socially scalable, and that was the whole point of this. Is like shells were socially scalable, and then blah 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 blah. So, all right, team, that's all I got for today. Thanks for coming. I will see you all tomorrow morning, and let me know what you guys thought about the Midjourney thumbnail today. I had a lot of trouble getting it to do what I wanted. It was some days it doesn't like making the Bitcoin logo. By the way, I don't like. It's just like I'm not doing that today. I don't know what, why it decides that, but it just wouldn't give it to me. But I thought it came out okay. I was pretty happy with it. All right. Peace.